So down here at the tomato garden, which I got something to tell you about, was able to pick some more tomatoes. It's getting late in the year, but we're still getting tomatoes. So it's looking pretty good. Carolyn was down here early. She picked a bunch, but she missed several. I don't know if she missed them or if they just turned red that quickly. Today's video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the FDA, well, probably USDA, I guess, the FBI have in common. And then I'll throw in a bonus about Visa. As you know, I've been kind of taking a new approach with this channel, doing some experimentation, and it seems to have paid off. The channel's doing much better than it did, well, for the last 2 years. One of the things I've been doing is talking about personal freedoms. The other day I made a video about the tiny house and how governments all throughout the country want to ban the tiny house. Now, I built my tiny house. There was no codes or permits required. I put it on a trailer frame, 200 square feet. I've talked about wood stoves recently and how the governments are trying to ban wood stoves throughout the country. Many municipalities and big cities have already done it. And I've talked about different types of foods being created so we'll get off meat products. The other thing I've been doing, and I kind of tricked my audience with this one, and I knew I would do it. I hate that I had to do it this way, but I wanted to prove to you that we're all guilty of it. I've been given a series of poll questions on my channel. These poll questions you can find on my channel. You go to my channel, you go over to community tab, there's several tabs, and then you can see all the questions I've asked. Well, over the last week and a half, I've been asking questions like, should the government ban tiny houses? The reason I ask these questions is the government has banned some of the things I've talked about. So like tiny houses, many municipalities have banned tiny houses. Should the government ban backyard chickens? And again, many municipalities have banned backyard chickens. And there was a bunch of questions like this. Should government ban wood stoves? Should government ban, I don't remember. Should the government decide what you eat? Was another one. And what was really interesting about this is almost every poll, it was like 96% of the folks who polled, and there was like 1,000 to 1,200 people who answered the question, said no. These bans should not happen. People should not get into our lives at all. What was interesting though, a little side effect that I didn't expect, was I was getting a lot of people to comment that I was crazy for asking these questions. What do you want? More government in your life? Are you nuts? Well, I mean, I kind of expected people to say no, but I didn't realize people would take offense to the question. I figured people want to stand up for themselves. Heck no, we don't want this. Well, I tricked my audience today, and I knew I would. I've been waiting for this for a week and a half, however long it's been. So I asked the question, should the government be responsible for the safety of the food that you buy? Now, it wasn't overwhelmingly different, but there was 60% of the audience at the time of this recording that said, yes, the government should be responsible for the safety of our food that we buy. What was interesting is I got one comment that said, no, I don't want government in my life at all. That's what I would have expected. It's not what I thought would happen, but it was what I expected should happen for all the people who said, no, government should not ban this or do that, do this. I would have hoped that 94 to 96% of you would have said, no, I don't want the government regulating my food. The way our system is supposed to work is a company makes a product, sells you the product, and if the product makes you sick, if they promised you that it wouldn't make you sick, and it makes you sick, then you get to sue the company. That's just the way our system has worked from the very beginning. As a matter of fact, when the Pilgrims and the Puritans and all those people came over here, one of the worst things that happened to this society during that time was lawsuits. Neighbors suing neighbors all the time. And so America has just become nothing but sue happy. But that's what controls our population. But government keeps stepping in and telling us that what we got to do. When government gets involved, it doesn't stop with, oh, well, Tyson Foods sold me some bad chicken, so the government needs to regulate that. I already sued Tyson Foods. I'm using Tyson Foods as an example, so no offense to Tyson Foods. I'm just using an example. So Tyson Foods needs to pay me restitution, and then the government needs to get involved to make sure it never happens again. Well, it's interesting because when you really get involved with the food safety of the government, they don't do anything. They come out and do some inspections like an auditor does, you know, for your IRS. They come out to make sure you're paying your taxes correctly. Well, same thing with the USDA. They tell the corporation, okay, here's how you inspect your food. You send it off to a private laboratory and they'll test it, and then you'll have inspectors online and they'll do some stuff, and then you do this stuff, and everybody has to wear hairnets. And so then they expect the company just to comply with these requirements. They don't necessarily have to comply. If they don't comply, they pay a fine to the government, so the government gets richer, but the food safety didn't go up. And we saw this with one of those oil spills down in Louisiana a few years back. The government came out, did a safety inspection on the oil platform, said everything was fine, no big deal, thumbs up, and a week later, one of the things that the inspector was supposed to inspect, the government inspector, just signed off on, said it was fine. Well, it was clear afterwards that it wasn't fine, they did something wrong. So the government really doesn't do anything. Here's the problem with the government, is I hire a bunch of people. I mean, we just heard the IRS hired 87,000 or 81,000 new agents. Well, these agents are going to have a job. They go around creating new jobs for themselves. So it doesn't improve the safety, yet we expect government to take care of us. I said this in the last video. And a lot of people agreed, yeah, we don't want the government taking care of us. I said in the video that our society has become more dependent on safety than freedom. And I'll put a up next box at the end of this video to that video where I was talking about the tiny house and government and all that. In that video, I said, you know, I can build my house because I never intend to sell it to anybody. But if I ever sell it to anybody, well, then somebody's going to have to get involved to make sure that the house is safe. Typically in the past, before big government got involved, you could hire private inspectors to come out and inspect your house. But now we have to have permits and government agencies who really, most of the time, have no idea what they're talking about. They don't look at the safety of something, they look at the standardization of something. So, oh, you got to have headers and all these things on your house. Well, no, you don't have to have headers. I'm using this as an example, just a terminology. It doesn't matter what it is. The headers don't actually improve the safety. What happened was that some company who designs and builds headers paid off the government agencies, said, hey, you tell companies, you tell people who are building their houses they have to have a header. That way I can make more money and I'll add to your campaign fund. The other day I was talking about in another video, well, this is a while back, how the USDA came up to my house years ago, before this batch of chickens, before we lived here, and told me I couldn't sell eggs, chicken eggs, without a permit. Well, I didn't want a permit or anything. I mean, I didn't get in trouble or anything. They just told me I couldn't sell eggs anymore. Long story, don't want to get into it in this video. That's fine, okay, I'll eat the eggs. I didn't really want to sell them in the first place. Wait a minute. The government is supposed to check for food safety. But then when I say I want to sell backyard chicken eggs, my audience says, oh, the government has no business doing that. You know what you're buying. You know that you're buying homegrown chicken eggs and you buy at your own risk. We don't have to have government telling us that we need food safety. Well, what did you expect? You told the government that you wanted the government to control food safety. We just heard about an Amish guy who was selling milk. And I'm not sure if it's the same Amish guy or not, but then there was another story, I think it was the same Amish guy to be honest, who was selling beef. So milk and beef to a membership. So these people would pay him a membership to buy his milk and beef. Well, it wasn't pasteurized milk and it wasn't FDA inspected beef or milk or anything. It was just some guy selling it. Well, of course, the USDA came out and busted him, and he's in court and having all kinds of problems right now. And everybody agrees we should leave the Amish guy alone. People knew what they were buying, but again, you put a poll out there, yes, government has to control food safety. So what do you expect? So then they come out and regulate, and then we get mad at the government that there's just too much government. Well, why did we ever ask the government to take care of us in the first place? So now the government goes one step further. And now they're asking people, the citizens of the United States, to sign up to the USDA's government webpage for a community garden. I don't even understand why they're doing it, but I can imagine what it's going to turn into. But apparently they just want to educate people how to garden and be able to share their experiences and their knowledge and all this stuff. But eventually, just like government always does, they'll have a record of who grows gardens. And so they can say, hey, Tommy didn't do too good over here last year. And he's in a minority, and you know, we got to take care of those folks So you need to give your garden produce to Johnny or Tommy or whatever I called him just a minute ago. So then it becomes a tax. You just signed up for a tax. Well, it all started out pretty smart in the beginning, and then it became overwhelming. This is another example of we let government sneak into our lives and just willy-nilly say, oh yeah, the government should control our food safety. No, they really shouldn't, in my opinion. I grow chickens and chicken eggs. And chickens can have E. coli a lot, but I am aware of the risk. I realize that I got to cook my food. I also can my own food. That's something else the USDA controls. Should the government control my safety of my food? Well, eventually they will. It's just a matter of time before they'll say, no, we can't have backyard chickens. Too many people are getting sick from it. As a matter of fact, there's been rumors about that a lot. The media picks up on, oh, half a dozen kids got sick the other day from a family who raised chickens. And so that's what you do, is you talk about the children. Oh, we can't let the children get sick. I just learned that now the FBI is going to private citizens' homes, not, really popular people or anything, just people who, like me, who have shown support of a particular president. What was interesting, this was on the news the other day. This lady was in bed. Her daughter saw that there were several FBI agents out on the front of her house. She goes in, goes to her mom. Mom puts her robe on, comes downstairs, talks to the FBI agents, and they said, we've had reports from your neighbors that you attended the protest up in Washington, D.C. that last year. I don't want to say it because I don't know how YouTube will react to it. She said, no, I wasn't there. Well, your neighbor has reported you. So we needed to come out and do an investigation. So she had to prove, I guess with her phone, that she was not in Washington, D.C. at the time of that happening. So now the government is being used like social services gets used when the mom is mad at the ex-husband and says, oh, look at this, the husband has been abusing the children. And so then there's an investigation. Same thing. We're turning on our neighbors that we don't like. And then just final, as a bonus highlight, just found out the other day the Visa is now going to track all gun purchases and ammo purchases. So when they send out the statement at the end of the month, it can tell you what category it is, like groceries or whatever. Well, now it'll have some sort of gun purchase. We do know that banks will turn information over to the FBI without a warrant. So if you'll click that up next box, that'll take you over to that video I was talking about earlier. So I hope I can inspire you to get away from the government like you say you want, so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.